Hey everybody, hi, hello, and welcome to that thing I do sometimes. um, we're gonna be looking at the full moon. We're gonna be doing the thing that I did last time for the new moon in Aquarius. So it's going to be what we have to recall or keep in mind from the previous new moon and the previous full moon. What we have to gain. And then between that, kind of sort of where we are at present. I'm using the Threads of Fate, Oracle cards, and tarot cards. That's that nice snug fit. Okay. And we're just gonna see what's up. I keep seeing out of the corner of my eye, it's like this really bright light. But every time I look over, it's like there's nothing there. It's so weird. I don't know if it's ever happened to me before. Usually it's like if there's something reflective, and it's like reflecting sunlight out of the corner of your eye, and you see like that really bright spot. It's like that's what I'm seeing, but I'm not. Like I keep looking over and there's nothing there. So maybe there's gonna be ascension. Wait, okay. Sorry. I'm just giving these a few shuffles. Ascension came out. I guess it's a little bit of this, like the sun will come out tomorrow, bet your bottom dollar type of energy. Or maybe there's like light being brought to a space that whenever it's like you can feel it, but you don't necessarily see it. Or like whenever you look over, it's disappeared, it's gone. And so it gives an energy that's a little bit like an optical illusion. If you focus on the thing, you'll miss it. But if you don't, you'll see it. It's like you can only see it when your eye isn't focused on it. So you try to look through it, try to look beyond it. And I've never been able to see those. I wonder if I'd be able to see them now. Where it's like a bunch of randomness on a thing, but if you train your eye like you're looking through it, then you'll see the image that's hidden underneath. But the image that's hidden underneath is so bright that I don't know. I love this energy, especially coming off of that energy yesterday or the day before that felt like creating a foundation for something, not knowing that you're making the foundation for it. Preparing yourself for something and you didn't even know that it was happening in the moment. And so when it presents itself to you, it may be a little startling or overwhelming. But if you choose to engage and interact with it, you'll understand. You'll see all the ways in which you've been prepared. So now we got Temperance coming off at the top of this one. I love a Temperance energy with Ascension because I feel like Ascension and Temperance, it speaks to the process of the journey. Rather than it just being like this rapid, out of nowhere sort of ascension. It's something that you've been steadily putting yourself in the space of receiving or of manifesting. Can y'all see that? Yeah. Looks like, I keep seeing that. I don't know why. And it's coming like, I guess the sun is over there coming in through my window, but it ain't like there's nothing that should be reflecting it like it is. I don't know. Also, if y'all doing some full moon Virgo stuff, y'all might want to do it tonight because it's going to be very, very, very early in the AM on the 27th. Sometimes, if you say, hey, the full moon is on the 27th and we see the moon at night, we assume it's the night of the 27th. But it'll be closest to its zenith, I guess, point tonight at like 2:18 a.m. Central Time. So I guess That's everywhere U.S. because Pacific is 2 hours behind, so that'll be like midnight Pacific. Yeah, remember Americans were behind the rest of the world, or most of the rest of the world, when it comes to the time zones. So for us, it's tonight. Tonight. And then the Conqueror of Wands came out. Conqueror of Wands, and I'm looking at the bottom of the deck this time. The Ruler of Swords. Ruler of Swords on the bottom. Hold on, let me turn this on, see if this will help. Did that help? A little bit, maybe. Ruler of Swords over here on the bottom with the Conqueror of Wands up top. Again, not again. So there's this energy of something that we've gotten to understand as factual, with the Ruler of Swords underlying this, but we're going to begin putting it into practice, putting it into action with the Conqueror of Wands here. And with Temperance being here and Ascension being here, it's almost this energy of there's not necessarily a balance between the thought and the action, the manifestation and the action that you put in to get it. And if you have a hot air balloon, it's like there's more air than fire, right? And so if it's too much air, it's going to put out the fire. Rather than fueling the fire, it'll put it out. So we need to increase the fire to accommodate the air that's here. But that was just a little bit of the pre-pre, you know. Oh my gosh. Sorry. My brain is not not very not lewd. It's been some lewd brain days. So first I'm going to look at what we have to recall. What is an energy for us to recall? I'll give it 3 more. 1, 2. Oh, goodness. Hold up. Oh, okay. It was only 2 of them. All right. Ooh, I thought it was more than 2. I thought it was like 5 cards or something. This is what we have to recall. So this is from the previous full moon. The last full moon was the full moon in who? Leo. And I am going to timestamp these after when I get into them. So check the description box or just click on the video and the timeline should pop up. That's one of my new favorite features. Well, it's new for me. I'll give it 3 more. 2 more. 1 more. Okay. Do I want to? Nah. And then this will be from the previous new moon, which was the new moon in Aquarius. I should. I'll talk about it as it comes up. Okay, there we go. 2 more. 1 more. That's a lot of stuff from the previous moon in Aquarius. But I guess that makes sense because that's the continuation of this cycle and period that we're in now. So next, looking at the current energy, or what's sort of most pressing now. Oh gosh. Is everything coming out in pairs today? Whew, okay. I thought it was 3 cards for a second. Woo! I'm like, that is not okay. I mean, it would have been alright, but come on. So this is, in the current energy, this is sort of like what's most on our minds. So the lighter cards, whoa, how did that get in here? Oh, gosh. And I'll just take these two. Come on. Because I actually read these. Well, I guess if I get enough of them, I may not read them out the book. Who knows? So the darker one is the more subconscious, or the more underlying aspect and influence. The lighter one is the one that's closer to, it's able to be seen. It's brighter. It's sight. And so this will be something that is currently there, but maybe amping up, or it could be underlying this in a way that we don't necessarily see it. It's almost like how, like, if somebody acts a certain way because of an experience that they've been through, this is the action, this is the experience. So this is the thing that motivates this, but this is what we see. We don't necessarily see someone's past. I'll take this one. And these two. And then this. Oh, I need more space. This will be what we have to gain from this lunation cycle. And that's the difference. Like, we don't necessarily always get what we have to gain. We don't always get the lesson. Or it may be something sort of auxiliary, something off to the side that isn't the main focus, but it's also there for us to receive if we so choose. Like completing a side quest, or an optional part of the quest for an additional reward. There we go. Oh, I think I know I've seen you. Bottom of the deck is Underworld. Woo! Well, okay. That's an energy. With all like the threads in this Underworld energy, I think I've seen Underworld recently too. It's a root energy. When I was talking about how like these are the potentially traumatic, or not traumatic, but joyous experiences, what underlines this, we're looking below the surface right now. Because the energy of Virgo being one of purification, it's like, well, it feels like there's also a little bit of a Plutonian influence, especially because Underworld came out. Pluto is still in Capricorn though. So at a certain point, the moon in Virgo will be trining more exactly Pluto in Capricorn. And so what it's doing is it's giving a less superficial energy to Virgo, right? It's like superficial Virgo energy could be pruning. But this Virgo energy, it goes beyond like pulling out weeds. It's like going under the ground and looking at the roots. Pluto and Capricorn is all about changes and foundations. Also, I think I might be making a Facebook group to just like talk about. I don't think I'm necessarily gonna like have it open, but to just get more practice with, like, I don't know, looking at transits more frequently. It's a place to put things that I'm like noticing. If I do open it up, then it'll be a place for other people to put things that they're noticing. I guess I'm going with this one first. So we're going to switch it up over here. And actually this, I might read a little differently. So this will be the thing. So for this, I only want one. Well, I already know it's the underworld. No, the underworld was at the bottom of the deck. LOL, JK. But this will be the thing. It's the subconscious thing, but we're going to bring it to the light instead of it being the other way around. So I'll give it 2 more. One more. This one is sticking out. 1 is sticking out. Bottom of the deck over here is the 2 of Coins. The 2 of Coins is all about balancing the material versus spiritual. Wisdom versus the crystal. And crystals can hold memory. But there's a difference between memory and wisdom. Because wisdom is the application of something in a current society, right? Or in the current space, in the current situation. To apply what you know to this situation is wisdom. And so maybe we do kind of sort of have a little bit of knowledge when it comes to this thing, but we don't necessarily have the context. Or this will be eliminating the context of it. So also there's a little bit of like reworking, and maybe that's the King of Swords energy too. Reworking our understanding, or some of our understandings. Maybe there's a little bit of an incomplete picture that we have that we've been sort of running with, trying to guess at how to fill it. Ooh, is that? Okay. Oh, no. That's interesting. Bottom of the deck over here is the Star. The Star is the light and the dark. We're dealing with underworld energy. We have the Star. What did we have in the other deck? I don't remember. The 2 of Pentacles, which was all about wisdom over memory, right? Because memory will be like, oh, well, last time I was in this situation, this happened, so it's going to happen again. Wisdom will say that the conditions, the environment, the circumstance surrounding the result last time was that. So if I want a different result, there's a hermit energy here. A hermit and a magician energy that kind of sort of feels like temperance. Because it's like things are headed in the same direction, but with the power of wisdom, there are certain variables that you can adjust. There are certain decisions and choices. You can change something in the environment, change something outside that'll lead to a change in the result. If you rely purely on memory, it's like, doing the same thing over and over and getting the same result. Wisdom will show you the points in the situation that can be changed. And then the Knight of Wands, Conqueror of Wands energy that came out earlier was like, that's actually doing something to change it. Because the Ruler of Swords, it's like, if you know something, just because you know something doesn't automatically make the outcome any different. You have to choose something different. So this Virgo energy ain't come to play. But I don't know. It's not necessarily... It's feeling like, it is the full moon, right? So it's illuminating that for you to do something. It may be giving you some information, but you have to do something with the information to get a change. If you don't do anything with the information, you're going to get the same result. And I think a lot of times what we do is we acquire information that we don't necessarily put into practice. And information, again, only does so much. Knowing is half the battle. The actual battle is the other half of the battle. And 50% is failing. So, in most classes. In some classes, 50% will be a C. Take physics at Purdue. Sorry. Woo! It's true, though. It's true. The average on that last physics exam was a 40%. Girl, where they do that at? Purdue. Oh gosh. But physics was one of those classes that, like, for me, physics was something that made sense theoretically, but when it came down to like using the equations to get the numbers, or when it came down to like talking about it or the actual problems, I just could not wrap my brain around it for some reason. But it's like everything was supposed to make sense. Like, it sounds like it makes sense, but I just couldn't put it into practice. Going back to like memory slash knowledge and wisdom, actually being able to utilize it in the moment in a way that gives you something that you want or something that you can use. Oh, duh, Virgo, hermit. Okay. I was like, what is this hermit energy? It's Virgo. And the sun is in Pisces, which is the dreamer, which is the hangman. I'm feeling it as the hangman today, and not necessarily the moon. Um, it's feeling more hangman than moon today. Um, but like the more classes I took later, since I was an engineering major, when I was done with physics, I was like, oh, thank goodness, physics is over. And then I had to take physics 241, which was electricity, magnetism, and optics. And I was like, oh my gosh, not more physics, please. But that physics was extremely interesting to me. Apparently, I like electricity, I like coding, and things of that nature. I kind of wish I was a computer engineering major or an electrical engineering major, because I really, really, really enjoyed it. But anyway. Um, and so that physics was a little bit easier because it was different. It wasn't like the natural. It is natural sort of things, but it's not like, gravity and pressure and all that kind of stuff. So after that one, I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness I'm done with physics. And then, take all these fluid dynamics courses, and I'm like, I'm in engineering. Physics is in like pretty much everything I do. So, but by the end, it was like, it made sense. At some point, eventually, it began to make sense. And going back to wisdom, and also going back to the thing with my junior year. So, junior year was different than freshman and sophomore year, because freshman and sophomore year is regurgitation. And if you go into junior year trying to regurgitate, you're not going to do well. Because junior year is about teaching you how to think, and how to think about, going back to wisdom, how the environment and the circumstances lead to certain assumptions, simplifying assumptions that make your problem easier. And freshman and sophomore year, it's like you were dealing with the simplest case every time. And so you didn't have to necessarily think about, okay, well, does the environment, does the situation, does the circumstances like validate these assumptions? It's like, no, just, it's regurgitation. Assume this, assume that, assume that. Use this formula, boom, 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 bang, there's the answer. But in junior year, it's like, well, like, why did you make that assumption? Like, that assumption in this case isn't valid. Either you don't have enough information to make that assumption, or this other piece of information invalidates your assumption. So you can't use that formula. And so junior year, it's a big turnaround. It's not necessarily difficult because things get harder. It's difficult because now you're being asked to look at things that you've accepted as true the whole time. And life isn't that simple. It can be fairly complex. It can be. It can be simpler than we make it, and more complex than we would like at the same time sometimes, or different. It's different in different situations, right? Um, and so like that's this hermit hangman energy. It's sort of like learning when what applies. And your past, if you keep going based like, well, based off of the past, based off of the past, based off of the past, this happened, that happened, the other thing happened, so this will happen too. It's like the assumptions, the environment was different in the past. Coming into that Knight of Wands energy, coming more into a magician after the hermit and the hangman, are coming even into temperance after the hermit and hangman, is coming into the ability to alter the circumstances to get a different outcome. This is a magic move. But for some reason, like when I did that Pisces season reading, I don't remember exactly everything that happened, but it was a lot deeper than like I thought it was gonna be. And this full moon in Virgo was like, oh, okay. I mean, Ascension was literally the card that came out at first, so I guess I'm not surprised that there's an opportunity to take things, like if you're taking things to a higher level, you have to establish your foundation even deeper. You can't build higher off of a shallow foundation. It's this not unilateral, but it's this reflected movement. The higher you go, the deeper you need to be able to comprehend and understand. And there's this aspect of like performative spirituality where it's like, I'm making the manifestations, I'm doing the rituals, I'm following this, I'm doing that, but there's no real sort of understanding that underlie it. And so there's something that you're missing out on. And again, I guess it's that, first, second, third, and fourth year type of wherever you fall is where you fall. But if you want to move up a year, you have to deepen your understanding. And eventually there's going to come the point in time where you need to know why you're doing what you're doing and how those principles sort of like capitalize on or relate to the certain energies. Because the times that we're coming into are going to be different than the times that we're coming out of, because everything is changing. But the fundamentals never change. It's just some of your assumptions aren't holding anymore. So you can't use the simplest formula and expect to get a correct answer. But now let's get into this. I'm kind of sort of going to be trying to do the timestamps as I go. So I'm going to say this is about 2710. And we'll see how they match up. Timestamps are approximations. Probably shouldn't be that way, but timestamps are approximations. And let's get into it. So I'm going to hold these up so y'all can actually see them. The cards that oh, girl, I've seen you. Oh, yes. Okay. All right. So I'm on to something. I'm on to something here. I don't know. I mean, if it's coming up as something to recall, it's something that we've experienced. And this is the thing about the past. The cards that came out is the Observer and Withdraw. And I've seen that Withdraw card before. The Withdraw card reminds me of the Seven of Swords in the Wild Unknown Tarot. And the Seven of Swords is the guardian of a certain piece of information or something like that, right? And once we become worthy of it, he dispenses it to us. So it's something being kept for good reason. It's like you don't give loaded guns to toddlers because, it's like, oh, I thought it was a water gun. It's like, no, girl, like that's real. I told you it was I told you it was a loaded gun and that the safety wasn't on. Like, why would you point and shoot at? And it's like, okay, well, why would you give a loaded gun to a toddler? Hello? Excuse me? Don't blame the toddler. And so Withdraw, and I've gotten this card before too. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that there's, flowing energies from the new moon in Aquarius. But Observer and Withdraw, it's speaking of this energy of things that you can only see when you're not so close to it. And this is actually what I was about to talk about. Because when it comes to the past and an energy to recall, we may be going back to a space that will reveal something to us now that we didn't see in the moment because we were too close to it. With Observer and Withdraw, whatever it's going to be clarified by, you may not have seen it in the moment, but with some hindsight, with some 20/20 clarity, you may begin to see a thread or a storyline or a chain of events that you didn't see in the moment because you were more distracted by your now moment, by that present moment. And again, that's like the energy in this. Like, currently, we may not see whatever will lead us to this, but this is a possibility in this current moment. That's why I sort of, put that there. This isn't necessarily the future or what's going to play out. It's intended to be the space of something that we have to gain. And if this thing isn't on our current trajectory, then we're going to have to rework our path a little bit, or to expand our viewpoint a little bit. So we're starting with the observer and withdraw. Now I'm going to read these from the book. Oh, where'd I put them glasses? Once upon those glasses. Here they are. I'll try not to move the camera. So first is the observer. The observer is obviously ether. Page 100. Oh, snap. Page 100. Thrice completed cycles, or twice, I guess. 10 2 times is 100. The observer indicates a time where you are being encouraged to suspend judgment or conclusions and simply witness. Humans are always trying to sort their external world. We want to process it, make sense of it, and figure out our place within it. It is our way of trying to feel secure and comfortable within our environment. However, this can also reach extremes where we are automatically forming opinions without gathering enough information. The observer asks you to pause and simply pay attention. This may feel passive, but in observing, we are already cultivating change. The balanced observer intuitively knows when to be present and when to move. They watch, but they do not do so in a way that harms others. Many people may interpret them as apathetic. In reality, they understand that there is a time and a place for action. An unbalanced observer becomes too stagnant. They can see how everything functions but do not believe that they are able to affect change as they are only one person. This can be a form of bypassing, as they may not stand up when it is needed. And again, that calls me back to the energy of the ruler of swords at the bottom, but the conqueror of swords the conqueror of wands at the top. The conqueror of wands it's the process of learning when to put in action, the proper amount of action, and things of that nature, rather than just like observing. And again, it's like making those subtle changes in the environment or in the situation that'll produce a different result. That's the tooth in that two of coins, rather than the crystal that is the grid system that is fairly uniform of how it's always played out in the past. Withdraw. Is this water? It sounds like it should be earth. Withdraw is earth, number 20. Duh. Oops, yeah, sorry. I'll try not to do anything too extreme to rouse the phlegm in my voice. This card is reflective of the winter season, the time of stillness, death, and collecting our resources. It calls for a retreat of sorts. While our culture values productivity, doing, acting, and pushing forward, Spirit is asking you to take a break and to relax. Go within yourself, find stillness, gather your strength for what is to come. We often find the solutions we need when we step away from all that we are doing and allow ourselves to unfold. The fox teaches us to find balance between being social and solitary. While foxes may spend some time within a pack, for the most part, they are solitary creatures that hunt alone, and then retreat each day to their den or hollow. The fox teaches us how to be comfortable alone, no matter where we are or what we are doing. Call upon fox if you struggle with feeling at ease in your own company. The yew has many incredible techniques that it uses to guarantee its longevity. Among them is the process where the branches grow internal roots so that even though the main trunk may die, a new tree connected to the original is already growing. That already growing part, that speaks to that, like creating a foundation in a way that you're not even necessarily fully cognizant that you're creating it. It's something else that's growing within the main body of one thing. And the main body may not die, But you can still choose to pick off a branch and plant that elsewhere to spread and further that impact, I guess. To bring more oxygen to the planet, because, pretty soon, not pretty soon, but she may be not starving for it, but a little bit of oxygen, a little bit more oxygen could be a good thing, especially, to balance out, equalize everything else that we're pumping into the atmosphere right now. Another process it uses is that when the branches reach the ground, they embed themselves and become roots that lead to the formation of a separate tree. The U teaches us that to go within always brings a rebirth, and that doing so regularly is a key to our personal development. Call upon you as an ally if you need support in creating a container for your personal hibernation. Oftentimes, when the words withdraw and hibernate are used, people envision solitude and inactivity, and possibly a cabin in the woods. But for most of us, this is not possible. We must still live our lives, maintain our relationships, and tend to what needs to get done. In doing this, Piemontite is an excellent ally for bringing joy to the mundane and enlivening our senses while we still remain in the underworld doing our internal work. There's a draw to the underworld. So it's about being both below ground and above ground. Kind of sort of calling back to that middle of the archway type of energy with the 5 of Ariel and the 8 of Michael the other day. And again, I feel like it speaks to that sort of element of paradox where we live an internal world and an external world at the same time, and we can't fully forsake one for the other. I mean, we can, but it won't lead us to the result that we desire. Actions behind manifestations. Knight of Wands, King of Swords. So coming off of the previous full moon in Leo, right? That's where the full moon was. We have, Death and the 6 of Swords. I love these two together because at the top of the Death card, you see a top-down view of a rose. Oh, wait, hold up. 1 second, y'all. I'm sorry to do this. I ain't sorry to do this because I'm doing it. Y'all see that? Hold up, wait. Let me do this real quick. Y'all see them flowers back there? Shout out to my girl who gave me flowers for my birthday. My dad was like, "You got some flowers?" I said, "I got some what?" I was so surprised, not expecting it, but very grateful for them. I had to make some room, so I'll put them right there. Anyway, back to this. Speaking of roses, it's a top-down view of the rose in the Death card, but we see the entirety of the rose in the 6 of Swords. And it can be the same rose that we see in the Hanged one, but this time it's upright. And it's upright because with the 6 of Swords energy, we're doing something with it. We're moving. Now, the bottom jaw in this 6 of Swords card reminds me that like life and death are in the power of the tongue. And so it's an energy here where our words need to also match what it is that we wish to manifest. We can't be manifesting an exit, but continuously speaking ourselves further into the whole, anchoring ourselves even more into what we are in. And it's to just speak more love and to speak more light. To speak the transformation rather than the decay. So with this, and I love that it's coming out for a full moon in Leo energy because the moon is that underworld, an internal emotional energy, but Leo is the sun. So it's bringing light to a space that doesn't necessarily get it. It's incorporating an element that it's not foreign, but it's sort of the antithesis of the energy that you're in. And so what it can be is a moment of temporary relief, but also if it's prolonged, it creates a sort of strain. And it creates strain in it being a sort of equalizing force, but it's a very transformative equalizing force with that death energy. And so internally, we have to ask ourselves, like, do we want things to be made better or to be made right more than we don't want to be disturbed? Because even if we're not in a great situation, sometimes if like we sort of form a comfortability in it. And it's like, Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. Like, why would you want to stop there? But a lot of us stop there and we make a home there, and we try to make the best out of it, to the point where if someone were to actually take us out of that, we would kind of sort of fight back. And it's like, is this not the liberation that you were seeking? But I guess you want to be comfortable more than you want anything else. So we need to release our comfortability. I think in the past it was probably more of an unbalanced observer, where we sit back, we learn, we watch, but we never act. And because that action was absent in the past, we don't have that in our library, in our storehouse of knowledge. We only know how things play out, but we've never necessarily done the things that we're being asked to do now to know that it'll work that way in the future. And this is where Sagittarian energy and Gemini energy meet in a good space. Because Sagittarius would have the ability to look at the situation and observe the situation, to identify fixed variables, or to identify, fixed conditions versus variable conditions, that which can be changed and that which is unchanging. And Gemini has the guts and the bravery, or the is it brave or is it stupid? It's not stupid, but from the outside it could probably look that way, to actually implement those changes. Like Sagittarius identifies, Gemini does. And when they work together, that's when you can make a calculated risk. Sagittarius and Gemini working together in its higher energy, one of those aspects is a calculated risk. And it's a risk because you've never done something like this in this space before. But it's calculated, right? You've taken time to sit down and observe, but now it's time to act. Rather than, and maybe that's the withdrawal was, like we were stuck in the withdrawal in the past. And it's like, if you never brace yourself for a storm, then of course, you're going to think that you're going to get pummeled every time a storm comes in. But you only have to brace yourself one time to know that, oh, when I actually prepare for this, it's not as bad. So let me continue to do that. And then maybe you go from preparing for it to, I don't know, relocating, or to doing something even more, to furthering those preparations, to bettering those preparations, to lessen and lessen and lessen the impact of the storm. But in the past, that's not really an energy that we did. Again, it feels like a lot of the spirituality was performative. But we're not really rooting or grounding that healing into us to the point where we're less affected, where our roots are stronger, so that we don't get uprooted every single time a storm blows through. And that's maybe there were instances where we did and instances where we didn't. Usually with the past energy, it's like you've done this before. I don't think we've necessarily done this in the past before. And since this energy, death and the Six of Swords, is coming up, and the recent, well, this is the full moon. We just had the new moon. So this is something that was potentially closed out in the previous cycle, or in a previous cycle that we have to get now. Full moon in Leo is Aquarius season. So somewhere around, January, February, maybe in years prior. specifically. It doesn't have to be. Maybe there is an instance of a time where we were observant, we saw the moment to strike, and we did it. And we capitalized on a sudden change of momentum, or we created a lot of momentum and like a burst to give us the initial thrust that we needed to really take off. But I mean, maybe if you've done it, then think back to that and take that with you moving forward. If you haven't done it, maybe it's like realize or think back to a time where things continuously got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And something inside of you kept telling you, like, move, move, get out now, do something, no matter how small, tell somebody, let somebody know. And maybe there was a part of you that thought or prayed or hoped that eventually it would turn around to get better because you, for whatever reason, couldn't find it within yourself to do what you needed to do at that moment, but maybe it never did. And so maybe it's for you to recognize now that if you don't act and move when you feel led to, it's going to be a repeat of something that you don't necessarily want. New moon in Aquarius. Okay. It's bringing us Conqueror of Swords with the Chariot. So here's the movement energy. And the card that came out, the two cards that fell out, it's Judgment and the Ruler of Coins. So Judgment and the Ruler of Coins is sitting in between the Conqueror of Swords and the Chariot. The Conqueror of Swords cuts through. I mean, you would think that it cuts through blockages and restrictions. I don't think it did. I feel like this is an energy of, like, again, it's like knowing in the past when it was time for you to make a move, but you didn't make a move. So it's feeling like maybe you felt like you kind of missed the boat a little bit. And with hindsight, this is a hindsight energy. Because it's like, man, if I would have moved or if I would have acted when I thought about it, I would have made it so far. And it becomes a habit, it becomes a pattern, it becomes something that, again, it's this energy of like building a case file of like time after time after time, like I should have done it, 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 I should have done it. And I guess it's this question of like, well, when are you gonna do it? It's like you've heard the voice of the thing that you should have done often enough that you should be able to recognize it in the moment. You just have to find the strength and the bravery and the courage to actually do it when it's speaking to you. Because it feels like something that you're not going to want to pass you by, or it feels like an opportunity to end a cycle of allowing things to pass you by. To come into a balanced observer energy instead of that unbalanced observer energy that never moves, never acts. And the Hangman and the Hermit, it's an interesting energy to sort of like have ruling and presiding over this. But one of those aspects is like, again, you're too close to the situation, your nose is too deep into it, that you don't move or you don't notice that shift and that change when it happens. And it takes me back to like the static versus dynamic memory model, where like if you spend time with something every single day, you don't necessarily notice the magnitude of the change that happens because your brain is filling in the gaps day by day by day by day by day. So it creates this seamless continuous image. But with the static model, it's like if you see something here and then 10 years later you see it again, since the last image that your brain has is something like 10 years prior, it's easier to notice the change and the difference. It's a gradual thing, but it really adds up. And like with on the not the shadow side, but in that dynamic of the Hermit and the Hangman, of like being with it every day, not noticing the magnitude of the change, not seeing that the now moment presents more opportunity than there's ever been, then it's like you kind of sort of brush it off. And so in that way it stays stuck because it's in it too much. And how do you get out of something when you're in something? That's when, mindfulness and those other practices can kind of sort of really help you. But to find the meaning behind the words and the actions behind the words, and to not just speak or do or regurgitate, to not just regurgitate. The hermit is about building your own, the hermit and the hangman. It's about building your own practice, building your own body of knowledge, discovering for yourself what works, and then eventually at some point utilizing that to be sort of comfortably rooted and grounded in a way that exists outside of other structures. It's like you can be internally grounded so that you don't need the world to prevent you, or your environment, your finances, your family, your loved ones, your partner, to prevent you or to present you some sort of stability, to have stability. So that when things outside, begin to fall apart, if you've done that and established that within yourself, you can maintain some semblance of structure and stability, and you can weather storms. Because even when he's completely outside of his element, the hangman is still himself. He doesn't buy into or trade away or discard all of the things that makes him or her, all the things that make them them, in order to fit in with the world around them. And it's not that you have to, it's about learning to create a space within a space. Going back to the you. It's the branch growing roots inside of the tree. So it's connected to the original, but it's still an offshoot of it. And then we have judgment and the ruler of coins. This is an interesting energy. Judgment and the ruler of coins, it's feeling like inheriting karma. When you continue to just go along with the system, you inherit the karma of the system. Even if it's things that you shouldn't be doing, or even if it's things that feel like they're not you, but to continue to do it anyway is to inherit the results of that system. So now we're bringing in an element where not only did you not do what you were guided to do, you took someone else's advice that didn't work out, and you fell into the same sort of consequences that they fell into. And here it's like, why would you get relationship advice from someone who can't maintain a relationship? And if they can't maintain a relationship because they're extremely self-centered and selfish, because they can't show up in a way with someone else that honors, both of them, then it's like if you listen to their advice, you're going to get the same result. And I think this is coming here to be as a reminder that sometimes the best place to get advice is from yourself. Because for whatever reason, either you're in a space, in a way, or you're just different enough from everyone else that are from the people that are around you, that the way that they go about doing things just wouldn't work for you. No one knows but you, and here's the voice that it tells you, move, do something. And I think the Conqueror of Swords is in a position to cut through all of that and to actually make a move with the Chariot, but it doesn't. Conqueror of Swords is I can't because of this, and I can't because of that. I'm bound, I'm tied, I can't do anything. And Spirit's if you couldn't do anything, we wouldn't be telling you to move right now. The fact that we're telling you to move, the fact that we're telling you to do something, this is the way out. But with that unbalanced observer energy, you kind of sort of let it by. And then what'll happen is hindsight, when you withdraw later, you'll be like, man, if I would have moved in that moment, I would have been free. I didn't think I could do it because of this, and that, but I could have. I realize now I could have done it. And it becomes this vicious cycle of always living in the past. Always living in the, I should have done it at that time. I could have done this. If I would have done it, it would have paid off. And again, eventually it's well, when do you learn to listen to that voice and do it when it's telling you to do it? Or are you just going to continue the cycle of creating more and more and more situations where you could have done it, where you should have done it, because you never begin to do? It's time to do. It's go time. That's what I'm titling it. Okay, well, I got the title now, so I guess I'll do it. It's go time. Full moon in Virgo. Boom. All right. I'm actually gonna break here and go to the restroom and clear my throat because it's getting like I can feel the buildup. But again, I'll timestamp when I come back, or you can just sit around and wait. I don't know. All right. All right, I'm back. Ooh, yogic breathing has been a blessing because I can breathe through my nose and not irritate anything. Just intentional breathing. Don't. Oh my gosh, I need to meditate instead of creating reasons to do things that I should already be breathing. Because I ain't really focused on my breath in a minute, and I had to when I was sick. Not well, yeah, I was sick when I was all backed up. Stopped it. Okay. Anyway, back into this. I'm gonna say 59 minutes when we get into the current energies. All right. This is interesting. Okay. All right. I mean, I ain't mad. We have another pair of cards here. We have the Explorer and the Alchemist. The Alchemist is the one who makes those little changes, who takes advantage of natural phenomena to get the result that he wants, or she wants, or that they want. The Explorer and the Alchemist here, it's an energy of being the first. It's like Mary the Jewess. Was that her name? I know Russell was just talking about how she was the first alchemist. Not the first female alchemist, but the first alchemist. So I guess this does really, with it being the explorer, it's like it's this level, and Ascension did come out before we began. It's like it hasn't necessarily been done before. And if it hasn't, I finally watched The House with the Clock in Its Walls again last night. And the purple lady, I don't remember her name, Kate Blanchett, maybe that's her name, in real life, IRL. She was like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And also, like, it's about finding your own unique way to do the magic. And then there was like, well, what's wrong with being weird? And then he cast his like first spell, like I guess not. He cast his own unique spell, and they were like, "Oh, he's weird." Like he real weird. But also the movie was about him accepting his weirdness and not sacrificing that weirdness or casting that weirdness aside to fit in with people who ain't even too much about you or for you. People who were only interested in using you in the first place. Like it was never going to be what your desperation to escape some kind of loneliness or your desperation for some kind of recognition made it out to be. It was never going to be that. And you ended up sacrificing or letting go of the one thing that not only made you unique, but that is the very source of your power to begin with. And it reminds me of, where does it say in the Bible? It's like, what good does it do for a man to gain the world but lose himself? And it's this very like internal external alchemy. It's primarily internal, but through the space of your actions influence the external. And again, it's some like mastermindy, like domino effect type of energy. Like I'll put this here and put this there and put this here. And then it's like that it reminds me of one episode of a sci-fi show. There was a person who was killing people because he like mastered like probability, or he had an understanding of probability on a way that for like completely like it's not humanly possible. And so he set like a pin on top of a mailbox perfectly, by the way, that it stood up on top of a mailbox. But then when like something drove by and shook it, it fell. And then there was a bicyclist who like tried to avoid the pin, or who like ran over the pin, and so he like curved and it caused someone else, like he hit somebody else and something went flying. And then somebody was like waiting to cross the street, but because that was going on, it temporarily distracted them and they stepped without looking and almost got hit by a car, or did get hit by a car. And it ain't to be like killing people, but it's like doing that in a good way. It's like, but it's like you don't necessarily have to have the superhuman capability of understanding how everything is going to work outside. That's why this energy is what we need to recall. Because spirit does it for you. All you have to do is move when spirit tells you to move. All you have to do is the little thing when spirit tells you to do the little thing. And the more little things you do, the more you learn. That's what this is about. The exploration with the alchemist is about learning a new kind of alchemy. But until you learn, you just got to trust spirit and do what you need to do in the moment. And you do it enough, if you're paying attention, you'll start to realize, okay, this works for me. And transmuting this into that, or producing that into the other thing. But this isn't, it's not something that you, and it's not that other 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh snap, I see 3, 4, 5, 6 on concurrent viewers. That's interesting. It's not that other people wouldn't be helpful. It's just that with ascension, it's coming into a level, coming into a degree that isn't necessarily established. Going back to my schooling, it's like being in biological engineering. It's a fairly new concentration. And again, working with the element of life, life does not perfectly follow a model or a certain program. And so the field itself isn't as established as something like, maybe chemical engineering or mechanical engineering or something of that nature. But chemical reactions are fairly predictable. And, when we're manufacturing machines, we can do that with a fair amount of predictability too, right? You still got to test it because in real life, it's like, things may wear down faster than predicted, or there may be like little things that you don't necessarily take into account at the jump. But with biological engineering, it's like you can give one animal a certain food and it notice a certain whatever, and you give the exact same breed of animal that same thing and you get something completely different because their bodies are different. They work differently. And so it's like, well, how do we do engineering with something that is not easy to exactly model? And also because it is so new, there isn't necessarily, or because it is what it is, there isn't necessarily like one set way to do things. And so in the program itself, like you get professors who value different things. And so like I took one class, I think it was ABE 304, and with the old professor, it was like properties of food. So it was like freezing and, fluid transport and all kinds of stuff like that. But under the new person, it was something completely different. And my advisor was like, yeah, well, we wanted him to teach this, but he didn't want to do it. So what are you going to do? It's a place where people get together. People getting together. Okay. I guess it's a place where people get together who all have their own sort of expertise and who all have something else to bring to something that isn't yet static. It's still dynamic. It's still in the process of being formed. And there are many, many, many different ways of going about doing something, and we have to sort of keep that in mind. And while we are keeping that in mind, we also have to recognize that if we feel led to do something in a certain type of way, it's for us to do that because it's not defined. And just because it doesn't work for somebody else, like somebody else may be like, oh, like I wouldn't do that in this time, or I wouldn't do this, like stick to doing this. If you feel guided to do it, then do it. You're probably feeling guided to do it for a reason. And if you don't do it, it may be a side that we never even experience or get to know, because you may be one of the very few, if not the only person who is right now feeling guided or pulled or led to do it in this way. Because once it becomes established, it's basically going to be taboo later. It's like, oh, well, things are established well enough. It always works when we do it that way. So not only are we not interested in whatever you have to offer, but we're also kind of sort of going to work against you. Because if you want to be in this major in this field and have any sort of um, reputation or whatever to be credible, then you'll do it exactly the way that everyone else has been doing it. And that can be like shadow, not necessarily shadow side of Sagittarian energy, but it can be where Sagittarian energy falls off, because it's more about furthering what is already established. And that's where we need this injection of Gemini energy. That's why the North Node is in Gemini right now, because we're not in a space where the things of old continue to work like they used to. And also, we're kind of sort of beginning to see ways in which they never really worked, or they didn't work well enough for a wide enough audience. But, back in the day, it wasn't necessarily about how well things work for everybody, it was how well things work for the select few. And it's still kind of sort of that way. People hoarding, money and resources and things of that nature. And it's not necessarily about hoarding at this point. It's just like we're in a point of great mutability and transition right now. And I mean, that's why it's like it's go time. It's time for you to do what you are sent here to do in the way that you're sent here to do it. And we may be coming into one of those times where other people can't necessarily tell you what it is for you to do. Maybe they can provide sort of points for you to sort of like dive in and explore. But the exact sort of treasure in this is going to require a fair amount of exploration. Whew, that was a lot of talk for no reading. Where my book at? Hey Siri, where that book at? Oh, it's right here. Okay, never mind.
Sorry, I missed that. Could you say it again, please?
Never mind.
Okay.
So we're starting with The Alchemist, page 88, in the element of ether. Is this the first one? No, it's not. Ascension. Oh, it is. It is. Okay. The Alchemist. The Alchemist card indicates a time of metamorphosis. It is a call to view everything in your current life as an opportunity for growth. Right now is a potent time to plant the seeds of what you want to invite in. It is also a reminder that our thoughts are incredibly powerful. We may not feel like we have a lot of control over our lives, but we can work hard at changing our thought patterns to ones that empower us. Whatever they are given, the alchemist is able to transmute. They may have a handful of bad ingredients, but they are able to make magic with what they have. It can be a long process, but they hold a vision for the final product while continuing to show up in their negative situation and slowly work at transmuting it. Someone who is in the shadow of alchemists may not believe in themselves. They may have both a fear of failure and fear of success, keeping them paralyzed in their current situation. They can also minimize situations and keep their true feelings inside, as opposed to getting them out and moving on. A key to being an alchemist is naming what is happening so you can work with it. Oh, oh, oh. And what did the withdrawal card? No, the shadow side of the observer was bypassing. Name it as it is. Call a spade, and then put that hoe in the garden, right? And then you get some radishes and I don't know, some cabbages and some broccoli, whatever. Call a spade, and then put that hole in the garden. Hello? How else is it gonna get to doing what it's supposed to do? It's like, oh no, we don't want to say the H word. It's a spade. No, that's a hoe. Hoes belong out in the dirt, planting seeds in this. Making sure it's nice and ready for some beautiful corn stalks or some sunflowers. Abundance and light. And I love that because Virgo is an earth sign. And with Virgo being mutable earth, it's able to, through the properties of purification, it's able to transform what isn't capable of nurturing life into what is. It's an energy of like irrigating and plowing land. It transforms something into something else, something capable of growth. It's very scorpionic in that way, or that's where we can see the sextile, the harmonious sort of aspect between Virgo and Scorpio. But Virgo also has that same harmonious aspect with Cancer. And so it's about doing it in a heart led way. It's about doing it in a way that takes the well being of yourself and others into consideration. Because Scorpio may not necessarily care. Scorpio, it's not that Scorpio doesn't care, but Scorpionic death energy is like, well, this has to be transformed one way or another. It's like Pluto. Like, have you ever thought that Pluto cared about you? Did you ever think that Hades cared about you and your feelings and why you did what you did? No. Because at the end of the day, it's judgment. Either you go in this place, that place, or the other place. And your feelings don't have much weight here. It's your actions that matter. What did you actually do? Not why did you do it. But that Cancerian element, it's like, okay, like I understand this and I understand that, but things still have to change. And then you get Virgo. Boom. Right? I guess. I don't know. Take it as it resonates. Who this? This is the Explorer. The Explorer. The Dora. This that Dora energy. Swiper, no swiping. Please, gosh, goodness, I just got this thing. Okay, coming back, coming back. Focus, Patrick, focus. The Explorer. There's a third eye on one side, there's a heart on the other side, and a compass in between them. This honestly feels like, I want to say North Node Cancer, South Node Sagittarius energy that we already had before the nodes moved into the Gemini Sagittarius aspect. So, us being connected to our hearts is something that we should already kind of sort of know. That's Cancer over Capricorn. More than the rules, more than the laws, more than politics, we should care about people. Before we come into this axis of Gemini and Sagittarius, where we're going to begin looking at our philosophies and theologies and sort of like the law behind the politics, behind the structures, behind the organization, the thoughts and the ideas that they're sort of like, that they represent and that they enforce. And it's like in this space, we're still trying to like, actually, I'm not going to say that because I think we have like really awakened to our heart in a lot of ways, or at least more of us had. Enough of us have to the point that we're in the space that we're in now where things can really begin to change. But next we're shifting into Taurus and Scorpio, and South Node and Scorpio. I was flipping through stuff before I watched The House with the Clock in Its Walls last night, and I was trying to watch something that I was watching on Amazon Prime Instant Video, but I was on my TV instead of on my Fire Stick, and so it didn't automatically pop up. And while I was scrolling on my TV, I saw something like Divine Astrology, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And it was a dude who follows Nostradamus Divine Astrology. He was talking about your unique cosmic index, your UCI or something, your unique cosmic identity that is like your natal astrology. And he was talking about the head and the tail of the dragon. Now, if I didn't know about Rahu and Ketu, I would have been completely confused. But he mentioned the dragon before. I was like, the dragon, it's your nodes. And what was interesting about that, he was like, I'll give you a prediction. Trump is going to lose. And that was interesting to me because all the YouTube spiritual people, all the YouTube astrology people I saw was like, oh, the astrology is saying that Trump is going to win. Trump is going to win. Apparently, Spirit is saying that Trump is going to win, but he lost. Now, I saw that on election day, the moon was conjuncting the North Node in Gemini, and I was like, oh, he's going to lose. But apparently, and he was talking about how, like, when you elect a leader, the stars of that leader influences and impacts what they lead. So, America's been operating under Trump astrology for a minute, and we've seen how that worked. And I mean, but like, if you really paid attention to his businesses before, or if you knew the reality of the state of his business before, it's like, why would you elect that to lead this country? And, anyway, why am I talking about this? It was something that was in there. It was the head and the tail of the dragon. Oh, because he was talking about the tail of the dragon moving into Scorpio and how destructive and with Scorpio being Scorpio and with the tail of the dragon being in Scorpio, the tail of the dragon sometimes emphasizing more of the shadowy, not that great aspects of the energy, with that being in Scorpio. He's like, oof, but the head of the dragon is going to be in Taurus, which is structure, which is stability, which is like the banks, and which is like it's beautiful. So when the nodes shift into that, we may really start to experience some extremes, and both of them are fixed. So and this mutable is, and I think when the nodes are in everything mutable, it's like, well, is it there? I guess it's room for more confusion because it can kind of sort of go either way. When the nodes were in something Cancer, or when the nodes were in something Cardinal, it was the beginning, so it wasn't yet established. So we go from something that isn't yet fully established, an idea essentially, to the mutable, like, is this going to work? Is that going to work? A lot of ideas. Well, when the nodes shift into Scorpio and Taurus, it's going to fix it. So whatever energy you enter that in, that's where you're going to be held. So I would say while the nodes are still in Gemini and Sagittarius, let's do the best we can to really set ourselves on a path that we want to continue on, and to really, really, really look at our foundation, and to begin to change that foundation in the ways that it needs to be changed. South Node, Sagittarius, North Node, Gemini. Gemini ain't afraid to get down there and F some S up. Sagittarius is like, no, but like, no, like I need that because it gives me this other thing, and it works with this other thing to give me this other thing, and like no. Gemini is like, you don't need this. Watch. And Sagittarius is like, oh my gosh, and then Gemini pulls it out, and Sagittarius is like, oh, the world is about to end, and then nothing happens, and Gemini's like, see, like I told you, you didn't need this. Like, you think that there's only madness, Sagittarius, but there is very much so a method. I've got lots of brain. And I saw this thing that you ain't see, that you were just convinced that you needed it because somebody else told you that you needed it. And I remember when I met my buddy Nathan, and was he a philosophy major? Philosophy and anthropology, maybe. And I was like, oh my gosh, philosophy, like I've always been interested. And then he told me what philosophy was, and I was extremely disappointed, because I thought philosophy would have like taught people how to be philosophers, but I guess philosophy is just learning what other people already said. So it's very much more Sagittarian than Gemini, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. But I was like, wait, so like y'all just learn what other people thought back in the day, and you just adopt what they thought and you carry that on? It's like, yeah. It's like, oh, well, I'm glad I didn't do that. I don't want to say I'm too free thinking for that, but I will say I'm too free thinking for that. I'm not the type of person that holds someone else's words or thoughts or perspective as gold. I'm not the type of person to sacrifice my own individual thought processes for another, regardless of how good it sounds. And I asked my mom the other day if I've ever been that type of person. My mom was like, what do you think? I said, well, of course I say no, but I don't know, maybe when I was like 2 or 3, I used to do whatever. And my mom was like, no, you've never been that type of person. And she was like, if you don't even listen to your own parents, like, what would make you think that you're even like that? And I was like, well, there's some people who don't listen to parents and who don't listen to the authority or whatever. But a lot of times it's like, I don't have a problem with authority. Like, if my parents are telling me to do something that makes sense, I do it. If it doesn't make sense to me, I'm not going to do it. I don't buck authority, or I don't question things just to question things. And so, again, I think it's about finding the balance on that polarity, where we're not accepting things just because someone else tells us that we should, but we're not questioning everything because we have to question everything. It's like neither aspect right now is going to serve us. There are going to be some things that you need to accept. There are going to be some things that you need to question and challenge. And it's holding the space between the heart and the third eye. Honestly, it's feeling more like the heart and the head, because it feels like something that we would call the third eye, but in reality it feels like we're not even, like, it's not. It's just switching out one operating system for another operating system. It isn't quite as unique or independent, I guess, as we would think it is. And again, it kind of sort of goes back to more performative spirituality. And it's a spirituality that is really good at knowing the rituals, and really good at knowing the candles, and really good at knowing the herbs, but it's kind of sort of devoid of substance. And right now we're coming into a space where substance is the most important, because we're in a space to create something new. And that's why it's important to learn why we do the things that we do. Because, again, some of those foundational beliefs may be changing, or some of the foundational energies may be changing. And if the energy changes, you may have to change the way that you access or approach or work with those energies. Anyway, the explorer. Man, let me focus a little bit more. Goodness. Well, since I'm time stamping it, feel free to watch it in parts. You ain't gotta watch it all at once. Hopefully people know it. The explorer calls you out of your routine and into a rhythm with your deepest self and all that is around you. When people think explorer, sometimes they conjure up images of grand traveling expeditions. And while travel can be illuminating and profound, do not fool yourself into thinking that the experiences you need are out of your reach. Explore from exactly where you are. Explore on your own by doing new things and projects. Explore your current environment, even if it's just taking a different route on your way to work. The explorer calls for a shake-up of the typical and the ordinary. Consider reflecting and journaling on the following questions. When you think of the word explore, what do you see in your mind's eye? What qualities are brought out in you when you are exploring, i.e., curiosity, excitement, play? A balanced explorer is driven by a need for freedom and to learn about the world around them. They do not like to be bound by society's expectations. Instead, they prefer that their external world reflects their internal world of mystery and curiosity. An explorer out of balance can have some ungroundedness and instability. Those that struggle being present with themselves may become addicted to constantly moving and going new places, doing new things, meeting new people. Explorers may also have a tendency to refuse to sacrifice their freedom in the immediate, risking their ability to survive, build for their future, to survive/build for their future. Example, not getting a steady job because they want to travel only to find themselves in debt years later and are then forced to sacrifice their freedom so they can survive. If this resonates with you, consider spending more time in solitude with no distractions. Allow for stillness and see what needs to be unearthed within you. Again, it's like not able to sacrifice in the moment, which requires greater sacrifice later in the future. And it goes back, it's like so far it's pulling back to that observer energy. And it's like sometimes we switch tracks and we switch gears so fast because that's where the momentum is leading. But it's like you don't realize that it's like you're playing the same game but on the other team. It doesn't matter which team you're on, you're playing the same game. It's like, and that's the thing about the when they say go left you go right mentality, because if that's who you are, if that's the extent of your rebelliousness or your uniqueness, then all of the system has to do is literally flip the way it gives direction. The system wants you to go left, but they know that if they tell you to go left, you'll go right. So the system tells you to go right, and you end up going left, thinking that you're defying the system, but in reality, you're doing exactly what it is that they want you to do. If the extent of your wokeness, if the extent of your consciousness is doing the exact opposite, just because they told you to do something, it's extremely limiting. And I think the system is smart enough to notice the people who do the opposite. And the system is also smart enough to still use those people to its advantage in maintaining the system that is. And also, that question about whether you can make the sacrifices that you need to in the moment to ensure that you get where you want to be later. I mean, if nothing else, the US's response to the coronavirus epidemic, it's made so plainly clear that no, Even in a lot of spiritual people, it's made so plainly clear for if you sit back and observe, it's made so plainly clear that no, we're not willing to sacrifice in the moment to get what it is that we want long term. And because we're not willing to sacrifice in the moment, we pay a much, 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 much greater cost later. We pay for things that we don't need to pay for because we're not willing to change. We pay, or we don't pay for things that we need to pay for in the moment because, oh, they're lying to you, they're using you, they're trying to convince you you're a sheep, you're this, you're that. And it's like you're not much less of a sheep if you just do the opposite of what everyone tells you. Right? Like it's not really as groundbreaking as you may think it is. And if the system is what the system is, I think they know and they realize the people who always do the opposite. And I think that they have a pretty solid way to utilizing you as well. And that's it. But it's like, you get to the end and you're like, oh wow, like I really bought into it this whole time. I thought I was being this, I thought I was doing that. And it's like, no. Like take a moment to actually critically think for a second. And if ever you're in doubt, your heart is always there. And that's the thing too. It's like we're always creating like boogeymen. If it's not the government, it's something else. It's like the government is doing this, the government is doing that. They're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. And it's like, could that be true? Yeah, sure. But like spiritual, powerful, multi-dimensional being that you are, why are you always sort of pitting yourself against something else? Why are you always sort of making something bigger and bigger and bigger and worse and worse and worse? And I think there comes a certain time where I guess there's a certain energy of spiritual responsibility. Excuse me. Where like if you are everything that you say you are, then is it not sort of irresponsible of you to fuel some of the things that you fuel in the way that you do? And it is possible to create the things that we want to create in a way that more and more people can enjoy, but it's like we got to start doing some stuff differently, and we have to start looking at things differently, and we can't break a pattern by continuing to reinforce more of the same. And it reminds me of one episode of Doctor Who. It's these the companions are stuck in a maze and they can't find their way out, but the doctor is like, the exit is right here. The doctor sees exits everywhere because the maze, like, he's not buying into it, and so it's continuously trying to eject him, but he's not leaving. He's trying to get the other two to see that, like, the exit is right here, but they'll never see the exit because they're so stuck in the system, and they're trying to fight it the whole time. But in fighting it, you're supporting it. In fighting it, you're feeding it. You're buying into it. You're strengthening it. You're giving it more and more of your energy. And it pushes us to this like doomsday sort of situation and scenario. And it's like, well, why? I don't know. Anyway, let me get back into this. I mean, but it's related. Like, this is the current moment. These are the current energies where we need to explore. We need to do something new. We need to introduce a little bit more thought rather than like, oh, they're telling me not to do this, so I'm going to do it. Oh, they're telling me to do this. Oh, they're trying to control me. They're trying to do this, so I'm not going to do it. Because you're not willing to make a small sacrifice in the moment, you will pay much, 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 much more later. And the alchemist, again, it said to transmute this, first you must call it what it is. You'll never work. It's like if you don't recognize the problem, if you don't name the problem, you'll never solve the problem. And sometimes it's like we get really defensive when someone tells us that there's a problem, to the point where we refuse to see it. And if another thing has been made apparent, refusing to see a problem doesn't treat a problem. It only amplifies it and makes it even worse later. Like, we've lived this in real life. Like, hopefully we can stop doing that now. But again, I mean, that's the one thing I've noticed in this whole thing, is that for whatever reason, I guess this is with these, for whatever reason, it's like, we talk a big spiritual game, but when it comes to making those sort of sacrifices in the moment, when it comes to rising to the challenge and the occasion in the moment, oh, it's just an illusion, it's not real, we're living in this 3D matrix reality, it's trying to distract you from the truth and blah, 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 whatever. And it's like, but like, this is the truth. Like, this is real life. Like, this is the direct consequence to your actions and the actions of the collective. Like, what about this isn't real? I mean, but, especially in America, especially for some people and everyone in a lot of ways, it's like we're so separated from the concept of consequence. And it's not surprising, because, like, who wants to suffer consequences? And if you can continue to get away with something, like, yeah, like, why wouldn't you? But, like, coming into the space that you're asking to come into, coming into the power and the responsibility with that power that you're asking to come into, you can't just throw off consequences. The card that came out is Shadow. This is the card that ended up in this deck, and I was like, how did that get there? In the current energy, it's Shadow. Shadow, to me, I'm reading it as like, we're not really seeing it. And with Shadow, it's like, we're not seeing it because we're choosing to not see it. It's not that it's being hidden at all. Honestly, the shadows have been making themselves painfully clear and obvious. To not see at this point is a choice. This card indicates that diving deeper into your shadow at this time will be beneficial. It is through knowing our unconscious self that we find the root of our blocks, perceived limitations, and wounds. Excuse me. It is also how we come to know ourselves in our totality. We cannot reach our true potential without meeting our shadow and working with the parts of ourselves that we have been told to lock away or to be ashamed of. This includes brilliant aspects of ourselves too, not just perceived flaws. The truth is, your shadow is your greatest gift. Bats are experts at moving through the dark using echolocation. They are unable to see what their surroundings are, but by producing high-frequency sounds and listening for the echo of the objects nearby, they are able to get an incredibly accurate idea of their environment. This is much like doing shadow work. We often do not understand the logic of our subconscious, but we can feel it. It can be uncomfortable, like we do not have our senses, but if we trust the process, the way bat trusts its echolocation, our shadow work comes alive in unexpected and magical ways. If you are struggling with things you cannot see in their entirety, call upon bat as an ally. Mugwort is an extremely magical plant that calls us to explore all aspects of ourselves. It is effective in trance work and is an ally for those wishing to go deeper, to do deeper dream work. Our dreams are the messengers of our unconscious. Mugwort encourages you to pay more attention to your dreams as a way of meeting with your shadow. You can intentionally work with your dreams by asking for messages before you go to sleep. Call on Mugwort for support in this work. Phantom quartz crystals have imprints of themselves within the crystal. When you look at phantom quartz, you can see triangular shadows throughout the body of it. In this way, their growth is captured for one to see. This transparency and evolution makes black phantom quartz the ideal ally for doing shadow work. Call upon black phantom quartz when you need support in viewing your perceived faults as gifts, as these are the potential measures of your progress. I guess the question here again comes from the explorer. Are we willing to make sacrifice in the moment to ensure that the work that needs to be done is done? And again, the way that we talk about and the way that we handle what's going on in the world around us, to me, is so clearly reflective of how we handle our own internal work. If you continue to dismiss the world around you as nothing but an illusion and the occurrences as something that's distracting you from something else, it's like, okay, well, I can see how you do your own shadow work. And I can also see why your dark nights are continuously as dark as they are. Or maybe how your dark nights get even darker. The way you treat and handle one is very indicative of the way you treat and handle the other. And if your approach to everything happening outside of you has been that, then maybe ask or begin to see if maybe that's not how you handle your internal work as well. Maybe that's the reason why you're not getting the results that it is that you wish to get. Because there's a lack of action in here somewhere. And candle magic, rituals, spell work, that's not real action. And when I say it's not real action, there has to be something that you're doing in real life to put that out. It's like all of that can amplify what is already there, but 0 times a billion is still 0. 0 times a trillion is still 0. If you don't put anything in, it's like that. It's like you're building up, you're amping up this energy, but there's nothing done on your part to ever release it. And that's one of the reasons why I said, the binaural beats and all the chakra work and Reiki and stuff, it's great. And it should be, I feel personally, something that supplements what it is that you're already doing. It's not a substitute for work. That's why, if all you do is Reiki, you probably got to have it done. It's time for another Reiki tune-up. Time for another Reiki tune-up. That's okay, that's fine. But at what point are you going to free yourself from this? At what point are you actually going to heal this? And to think that healing is something that doesn't happen because you haven't been healed or because you continue to feel the tremors from your traumas and you continue to get triggered, it's not a fair assumption, or it's not a fair point to reach, because have you ever fully done any of the healing? Or do you just, play your role in the performative circus that is what spirituality is now? And also in divine astrology, he was like, for people who are earth heavy, so Capricorn heavy or Taurus heavy or Virgo heavy, maybe they would never see the value in something like astrology or looking to the stars, but it's not in their makeup for them to really see. But we need people who are down here making bridges and cars and building houses and stuff, so that energy has its place. And I was like, wow, because I'm water and earth dominant myself. And so maybe that's why I've been really coming to let's can we make spirituality practical? Can we make it into something that we actually utilize in our day-to-day life? Because if your head is in the stars and in the clouds, but your feet don't go anywhere, nothing's ever going to change. And it feels like a lot of spirituality, although it'll talk about oneness, if it's so much about oneness and coming into that sort of unified consciousness, then why does it work so hard to separate itself from the world around it? Why is it so much about calling everything outside of you an illusion? Or it's just it's the matrix, it's the pre-programmed 3D, it's just this, it's just that, it's just a mirror of you, it's just reflective of you. But where's the unity in that? And that's, I guess, what's, again, from the observer perspective, when you step outside of it, you see all of the little all the ways that it contradicts itself. It's like, how do you claim that you're trying to come into a space where you're one with me, where you don't even see me, where you're not even listening to me, where you choose to ignore me or treat me as if I don't exist because what I suffer because of your actions, you don't want to acknowledge. And again, it's a separation from consequence. You can't become a sovereign of anything if you're separated from your consequence. Or it's like you try to take on only the positive consequence while rejecting all of the negative consequence. Well, taking all the positive, rejecting all the negative, it does nothing more than to strengthen the polarity and the duality that already is. And maybe that's sort of like counterintuitive. Like you would think that if you ignore all the dark and you accept only the light, then you manifest a world of light. Well, it's like, no. When you continue to suppress that which was already suppressed, when you resuppress it, you're strengthening that polarity. Here is an opportunity for you to ease that polarity by addressing, by handling, by taking care of, by actually healing something that is hurting. When you suppress something that is hurting, it hurts more. It bleeds more. Well, technically, when you put pressure on it, it should bleed less. But in this way, it doesn't. It's like increasing the pressure. Maybe you think you're stopping the blood flow, but you're not actually like treating that wound. And as soon as you let go, as soon as it escapes your mind, boom, there it is, gushing all over again. But you're like, oh, I'm a comfortable enough distance away from it now that, I don't have to see it. Instead of healing the world, it's like, you're like, hey, can you like shut up? Because, your cries and your screams are like ruining this, like you're killing my vibe. Like, can you not? And it's just, I don't know, it blows my mind. And because in my mind, it's like, it's so obvious. It's like you're like what you're saying and what you're doing are like they're not aligning. Or what you're trying to manifest and then the actions that you put into it, it's not aligning. And with the shadow being here in the current moment, again, it's like for us to face these things. And to continue to not do it is to continue to sort of allow them to be what they are, but to a greater degree. Oh, look, the moon and the 10 of coins. This is the more conscious sort of aspect. The moon and the 10 of coins, it's like, it's this energy of like, if we treat it as if it's not happening, if we recognize it for the illusion that it is, then we get that 10 of coins blessing. But in reality, what this does is if you continue to suppress this, it creates a legacy of darkness. It creates a legacy of shadow. The shadows get darker and darker and more powerful so that generations down the line will have to go through all of this again, but worse. Because you weren't able to rise to the challenge or you weren't able to do what needed to be done in the moment. Now later, the problem will only, like, it amplifies in darkness. Darkness amplifies darkness. And it's canceled by light. So if darkness is trying to come to the light, it's coming to be canceled, to be healed, to be resolved. If you put it back in the darkness, that just further amplifies the already existent problem. Like treating coronavirus as if it isn't a thing hasn't necessarily been very successful in getting us to not have to sort of, like it hasn't made it any less of a thing. And that's another thing. It's like if you want to prove something as non-existent, or if you want to prove something as fake, then you run it. Like not engaging with something doesn't prove anything. Like to prove that it's fake, like to prove that there isn't a monster in your child's closet, you go into the closet. You open the closet and you say, see, there's no monster in here. You don't go, oh, there's no monster in there, and I'm telling you that there's not a monster in there, so there you go, all better, you don't have to worry. And the kids was like, well, can you check anyway? And you're like, no, I told you there's not a monster in there. Go to bed. How is that child supposed to like trust you with anything? It's like, oh, well, if I tell my parents, they're not going to listen to me anyway, so. And then, some people's kids go through such tragedies And they're like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't you tell me? I can't believe you were suffering from this. And it's like, well, everything I did tell you, like, you never believed me. You never listened to me. You never made time for me. And in fact, I did tell you about this several times, but you weren't hearing me. You weren't listening to me. And it's like that same metaphor, like that's how we approach life. And that's how we approach that. It seems to be the prevailing spiritual approach to a lot of things right now. Instead of actually going in and proving that it's not there. Because you may find that there actually is a monster in that closet. And maybe it's a Mike or a Sully that got stuck on this side and they're trying to get back home. May not be a scary monster, but there's something in that closet. And you yelling at your kid, telling it that it's making it up or it's just your imagination. Shut up and go to bed. I'm trying to sleep. Can you like stop crying in here, please? I'm trying to get some sleep. Goodness. It's like, ugh, I knew we should have never had kids. And that's what you tell to your kids. And it's like, oh my gosh, like what kind of relationship was that? What is that going to then produce in the world? But then when that children has kids, and that's the funny thing or the interesting thing about when like people have kids. Like you would think that at least 9 times out of 10, people would go, oh, my parents did this to me and that wasn't great, so I'm not going to do that to my children. But what ends up happening most of the time is like you traumatize your kids in the way that you were traumatized. And it's like, where'd that work? Where'd that make sense at? I was yelled at. I wasn't listened to, so I'm going to do that to my kid. I was beat up. I was teased. I was bullied. So I'm going to find somebody that I can beat up and tease and bully. That's this inheritance of shadows, an inheritance of nightmares. We like it's not current, it's not new, it's something that plays out in so many ways. People who suffer misfortune and tragedy, instead of doing most of the time, instead of doing anything to not experience that, they just find somebody else to make suffer. I'm just like, oh, I'm an empath, I'm this, I'm that. But girl, when people are hurting around you, what do you do? Like, oh, that's an illusion, that's not real, it's fake. They're just trying to get you to do this, they're trying to get you to do that. And it's like, no. Spirit, the divine, is trying to show you the very real ways in which the world is hurting. And it's never going to be convenient for you. It's like, oh, now is not a convenient time for me. Can you come back later? Well, later it's going to be even worse. Later the problem is going to be more of a problem. If you don't have time now, how are you going to have time later? And again, I think it's reflective of the ways that we don't even do that for ourselves. And if you do that for yourself and you don't do that for other people, then you're extremely selfish. And I don't know how that works. Like, we really think we're getting a good 10 of Pentacles by ignoring things. But what we're doing is we're leaving a legacy of shadow. That's what we're writing into the earth through the space of our actions, through how we engage with those around us. That's what you're coding to repeat. And it's time to like really break this stuff. So the more subconscious influence, it's the 8 of coins, the anchor, and the 5 of coins. I love this energy. I think this energy is just, it's everything that I already said. It's everything that I already said. Continuing to do that, making a practice out of it, making a habit out of it, it continues to reinforce this 5 of Pentacles energy. You're not doing anything to help the world when you're ignoring all the ways in which it's hurting. You're not doing anything to help yourself when you're coping, either spiritually or with substance, instead of actually handling what's hurting. And it reminds me of that one episode of Futurama where there's the garbage ball that's about to like crash into the city or whatever, into New York or whatever. And then Fry, the person from, that time, is like, well, why don't we just make another garbage ball and shoot that into space to handle this one? And then they're like, well, if we do that, then in the future they'll have to worry about 2 garbage balls. And he's like, well, that's not our problem. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. And so that's what they do. But again, it's like, it's meant to be like this, like, haha, oh my gosh, like that's funny, but like that's literally what we do in real life. But in real life, we expect for things to not blow back on us when they do, because again, we've become so separate from the concept of consequence. And so we take these partial, empty, lack of substance, or not completely void of substance actions. And if we take enough of them, we think that we'll get something of substance enough to get what it is that we actually want. When in reality, we can take fuller action, take more substantial action, and then get what it is that we want. And again, with the explorer, and even with the alchemist, like, you don't have to know what that is. Spirit knows what that is. Spirit will tell you when to act. It's up for you to act, because with the shadow, it's like, that's a bypassing energy. It's not doing it. It's not seeing it. It's an energy of like, it's like you're pulling the veil over your own eyes. And there were a lot of people that consciously chose to veil themselves when things were getting real, real heavy last year. And it's like, oh, it's an illusion. Oh, it's not real. Oh, it's just a 3D matrix. Oh, they're trying to distract you from something. And it's like I said, when you know how people are, when you know that people will go left every time you tell them to go right, if you want them to go left, just tell them to go right. And they'll go left every single time. But they'll go left thinking, like, what's even worse is that, like, you think that you're like acting against the system, but like you're buying into it. So at least if you were consciously going left, it's like, they want me to go left and I'm going left. So, I pretty much know what to expect. But like, you think you're out, you think you're free, you think you're whatever, but you're playing right into them. It makes it extra like deceptive and sneaky, but in reality, you're only fooling yourself. Because there should be that part of you, there should be that heart that knows, like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand it. Maybe people think it's like some elaborate scheme that people are like coming together with, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's for me to know, honestly. But this is the energy at current. I ain't locked that door. Hold up. Oh, what this is? Oh, thank you. It must be my birthday or something.
Must be. Or something.
Can you lock my door, please?
Huh?
Can you lock my door, please? Oh, thank you. Oh, shout out to my friends. Y'all too nice to me. Y'all too nice to me. I got flowers and I just got a card. Yeah. And honestly, like, if you work regularly with me, like, and this is one of the reasons why I said that I'm not for everybody. Because my practice is a practice of actually handling things, right? Like, when I got the cards for myself, I was like, I'm getting this to see the things that I don't see within myself, to handle it, to deal with it, to address it, not to resuppress it, or not to find a way to put it back in the box that's a little bit more neat than it was before, because again, it's going to continue to grow. And I'm not trying to shave off little bits of shadow to have. It's like a sheep. Like, if you get a dog, you know that it's going to need haircuts frequently. You don't cut its hair, you don't cut your yard, you don't cut anything that is organic one time and expect for it to not grow anymore. That's unrealistic. But that's apparently a lot of people's approach to shadow work. You do less than the bare minimum one time and expect to never have to do it again. This is full moon in Virgo. And apparently there's a lot of deep energies. Full moon in Virgo ain't gonna let you get away with it either. Okay. Anyway. Moving into the next spot, I'm going to say 159.25. And this is what we have to gain. It may not be exactly on sort of like the path and the trajectory excuse me, it may be a little bit out of the way, but it's something that we also have to gain. I should have known this was going to be like this when the Underworld came out. The card is the Wildling, and we've had the Wildling before. I love the Two of Swords energy. I feel like the Two of Swords energy, it's you coming into a space of deciding more than anything else. It doesn't matter how things are going out. It doesn't matter how things are playing out. It's you coming into the fullness of what alchemy energy is. And again, for the alchemist, you have to call it what it is. That's step one to transmutation. And then after that, what are you going to do in the situation to make it, to transmute it into something else? The Wildling, number 118, is Ether. That's 115. I'm getting hungry. I've gotten this card before. Pulling the Wildling card indicates a time to connect to the most primal parts of yourself. This may mean you need to detach a bit from people around you so you can hear the whispers of your deepest knowing without the influence of others. The Wildling is raw, empowered, and independent. Many people are intimidated by them because they need little from others and prioritize radical freedom, which can be unsettling as most of society operates within unspoken expectations and contracts. The Wildling burns the contract and heads into the woods. Wildling comes to us as an ally when we need to break free of the systems that limit us. The Wildling within us remembers a time where we lived with the land, when we walked barefoot, when our lives were in alignment with the natural world. Wildling is a call for remembrance. A good way to invoke Wildling is to dive deeper into our body and hear what it needs from us on our most primal level. A balanced Wildling prioritizes freedom but remains grounded. They possess an instinct that may not make sense to others, but never leads them astray. They are present to their own emotions and needs and will spend time on their personal development. An unbalanced Wildling is a state of perpetual chaos. They are avoidant and often use the external for a band-aid of their internal dis-ease, which often means they are constantly moving on to the next thing. What they move on to never ends up bringing what they hoped for. That energy is echoed or mirrored, was it the Explorer, I think? The Explorer was like, in balance, it is like revolutionary, but it's also grounded. Out of balance, it's ungrounded and it's constantly moving on, constantly sinking. It's insatiable. Now, the underlying aspect here is who did? The Nine of Swords, the Tower, and the Hanged One. The Hanged One, the Tower, and the Nine of Swords. Earlier when I said, the saying is that if you're going through hell, keep going. And I was like, it's like we stopped in the middle of hell and we tried to make a home there. And we're wondering why we're constantly sort of inundated by not great things. It's like, well, look at where you've stopped. And it's like, but I do this and I do that and I'm doing the other thing. And honestly, when I first came across the twin flame journey, for me, like I felt that there was some truth to it. I felt that there was a lot of truth to it, honestly. But observing people who claim to be on it, like I quickly noticed that it's like it somehow became this thing that otherwise spiritually progressive people sort of like trap themselves in, or it allows them to get trapped. It felt like on a road to a certain destination, it's a pit stop along the way. It's a rest stop that not a lot of people, but that people sort of go to, like they make that rest stop and they never get back on the road to get to where they were going. It's like they get stuck there. It's a tourist trap. And now, after this happened, it seems like there's a lot of spirituality that is a tourist trap. And it's like, I don't know, just hearing things from people that's like coming across people who like get stuck in the same dark nights over and over. It's like, how do you see that as anything like else but like the tourist trap that it is? But I guess what happens is, just like the twin flame journey, people take that to be an inherent part of the journey because other people fall into the same patterns of inaction, and it's what it is for them, and then they attract more people into that and they fall into patterns of inaction. And I guess, at that point, it's not surprising that so many people would think that that's something that is sort of inherent to that journey. And maybe it becomes inherent to that journey because of the name that people give to it. And when we give something a name and we give energy to it, we give it power. But I don't think that it's not what it was intended to be. And the Hanged One, the Tower, and the Nine of Swords, it's not what this is intended to be. First, like, I'm not really feeling this wildling energy as like something positive for us to gain. Usually the intention with like what we have to gain is like we gain something that is like a boon, is a benefit, is a blessing. It's the light out of the darkness. It's something that we weren't expecting. It's an unexpected gift, an unexpected surprise, like those flowers I got today. But this feels like the inheritance of that shadowy cycle. But we're not seeing how we're stuck. Well, what's this down here? Maybe that's the shadow aspect. Do we get a light aspect? The light. Oh, okay. So the light aspect is the anchor, the pillar, and the nine of coins. Now I saw the pillar, and I almost made. Oh wait. Oh my gosh! Hold up. When does freeze? There we go. We're back. So I saw the pillar when it came out. And I noticed the anchor here, and I almost made a comment. I was like, oh snap, the anchor is here and the pillar is over there. The anchor is the energy of the emperor, the pillar is the energy of the empress. But here, it's like I didn't even have to make that correlation because in the light of this energy here, the anchor and the empress are together. Not only are the anchor and the empress together, but they're both carrying this Nine of Pentacles energy, which is self-sufficient, which is self-contained. But it's not the 10. Neither one of them reaches the 10 of Pentacles alone. They only reach the 10 of Pentacles when they come together. 9 plus 9 equals 10. And it's like the 9 being the 10, that's what happens when you, oh my gosh, it's like it's kind of like a flower, kind of like a bud, but not. Because it's like the 9 is the 0 attached to the 1. If you separate the 1 and the 0, you get 10. Together it's a 9. Separate it's a 10. It's an energy of like budding and blossoming and falling off. It's the yew. It's the branch of the yew that becomes its own tree. So the Hanged One into the Tower gives you the 9 of Swords. The Emperor and the Empress, the Pillar and the Anchor, gives you the 9 of Pentacles. So this is like one outcome, this is another. With the Hanged One in the Tower, that's holding on to this belief that the journey will always be what the journey always is. It's continuing to manifest a continuously difficult journey. And again, this energy comes from a lack of this. From a lack of doing, from a lack of acting, from a lack of healing what comes to the light to be healed. you form this pattern of belief that it will always be this. It has always been this because we've never taken the initiative to do what it is that we should have done in the moments when it came to the light. Like, and again, it's like people will call a dark night, like something is happening in my life that is triggering me. I am feeling a lot of emotions right now related to this one thing. You call it a dark night of the soul, and you do next to nothing to bring light into that situation. What that dark night of the soul is, it's the universe, it's God, it's spirit, giving you an opportunity to not only see, not only feel, not only experience, but to resolve, address, and heal something in your life. But you label it a dark night. You spiritually or through substance cope with it, bunker down through the darkness. You instead of continuing to go when you're going through hell, you bunker down, you anchor yourself in it, you weather the storm, and then you go about your day only for it to come and visit you again. Because it's like something is trying to get you to see this, to heal through it, to work through it. But that's the hanged one in the tower. Because you stop moving. And so the tower, it's like it's something that continues to happen. But with the Nine of Swords, it's like you don't even see that you're keeping yourself stuck in the patterns and the cycles that you're keeping yourself stuck in. Because in the moment, you're not willing to do the difficult work to get through it. You're not willing to take those actions. You're not willing to make those sacrifices. You're not willing to be truly, ultimately uncomfortable to get out of it. You're establishing a comfort in something that is not great. And I was comfortably depressed for a long time. I didn't like depression, but it's something that I expected, right? It's like when I felt it coming on, it was like it was a heavy weight, but it was a familiar weight. Not necessarily comfortable, but familiar. And humans can turn familiarity into comfort. And that came out way back here. When it's like, you get so used and so accustomed to this that when actual salvation, when actual healing presents itself, it disturbs your comfort too much for you to actually take it. And then out came this message of, are you willing to do in the moment? Are you willing to sacrifice in the moment to get what it is that you want? Or are you going to set yourself up to have to pay an even steeper cost later? And again, based on the way that physically and even spiritually and in a whole bunch of other ways, a lot of people have handled the events that came to the light in 2020, not only is it so apparent and obvious that a lot of the shadow work that we've been claiming to do, we haven't been doing. But it's just like, not only were we not doing it in the past, it's like, I don't know how willing we are to do it now. And like I said, like yesterday, I reached the point in my life when I was like, I'm not doing this again. I am not. So is it easier for me to do a lot of stuff? Probably, yeah. But that's because, I was actually fed up enough to change stuff. I was sick and tired enough to no longer be sick and tired. I don't know. I reached a point within myself where it's like, I'm not doing this anymore. If I come back to this place again, I'm not going to make it. And I'm not going to do that to myself. I'd much rather do the uncomfortable work in the moment. I'd much rather show up and be brave and put it behind me rather than this to continue to be something that I continue to experience in my life. It's like, oh, the dark night of the soul is like a spiritual depression. And it's like, girl, if you are going through the same thing over and over and over and over and over, can you be honest enough with yourself? Can you be aware or observant enough to ask yourself if maybe you're not doing anything to actually heal this, to actually move through this? Because I don't know if it's the system of the divine to continue to get you to fall into the same pitfalls, but even deeper every single time you hit them. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's more to life than that. I feel like there's more to spirituality than that. I feel like there is more to everything than that. But I don't know, humans being the creatures, the apex, whatever that we think we are, we've gotten really, really, really good at not actually doing things to get us out of our situations, but convincing ourselves that we are. And so when we continue to have the same issues, we learn to accept it as a feature of society. And being Americans especially, what really blows my mind is there are so many countries out there in the world, some of them not even as advanced as we are, and they don't have our issues. Because, I don't know, somehow they found a way to put into policy, to put into action things that reduce the occurrence and the severity of these things. I don't know, it's almost like other people experienced some kind of tragedy and decided that it wouldn't happen again, rather than just being like, oh, well, I like my guns too much. But then when it's your family members, when it's your loved ones, when it's your community, oh, that's too close to home for me. Oh, I don't like that. But see, the thing is that, like, everyone else has that I don't care attitude. And it's like, you get frustrated, you feel betrayed by the world or by spirit or whatever, because when you are personally afflicted, there's no one there to care for you. But it's like, well, where were you to care for other people when it was them? What you put out into the world, you get back. And we've been putting out a whole lot of negligence. We've been putting out a whole lot of shut up, there's nothing in the closet, go back to sleep. And then you get it back. Or the world waxes worse and worse and worse and worse. But here, with these, we're coming into the point where things are like the divide is really going to start to be created. We've all experienced what we experienced in the past collectively, together. Some of us experienced a different flavor. But right now we're in a position, in a place of choice, in a place of action. North Node, Gemini, South Node, Sagittarius. It's all about the choices that you make, Gemini, the lovers, and how that is the tool that creates your experience, North Node, Mercury, the magician. Spirit ain't doing it all for you. Temperance, South Node, Sagittarius, no, it ain't working. And it's not something that, well, if we hold out long enough, then things will just get better. South Node, Jupiter, the Wheel of Fortune, not going to happen. And again, when the nodes shift into Scorpio and Taurus, whatever you're establishing right now, while it's mutable, that's the energy that's going to be locked into place when it gets fixed. So this full moon in Virgo is asking, it's go time. You should know the voice of spirit by now. You should know when it's time for you to move by now. And you should have enough of a body of evidence of disappointments and of failures and of, man, I wish I would have done it when I had the mind to know that now it's time to begin to act. Because if you continue to not, it's like you're going to continue to delude yourself. And when that illusion breaks, it's like you're going to wish you had done everything that you're being guided to do right now. And with this Nine of Swords, it's almost this energy of like, you won't see it until the very end. And then you're going to be like, how did I get here? How did things get this bad? How did we end up here? And by that point, it's going to be like, well, when we could have done this, we didn't. When we could have done the other thing, we chose to do this. And it's going to be laid out for you. A series of your choices and decisions and actions and inactions and indecisiveness that led you to this exact point in time. Because you chose to follow a dying system with the moon and the Ten of Pentacles. Because you chose to make a home in hell instead of getting the frick out with the Hanged One that's now on the table, the Tower, and the Nine of Swords. That's what it is, delusion. Convince yourself. We spiritually convince ourselves of all kinds of things that we're not actually putting any real effort into making happen. And I don't know how long that's going to continue to work for us. I don't think it's going to continue to work for us very long. And if you look at the world nowadays, you would see that it's never actually been working for us, because if it was working for us, we wouldn't be in the place that we're in right now. So, I'm not even going to feel bad about this one. Usually I'm like, oh, like I was hoping it was more whatever. Honestly, at this point, for the time that we're coming into, it's a time of action. And it's a time to do stuff new, and it's a time to do things different. And not knowing what to do is not an excuse. Things not being proven to you is not an excuse. Shadow side Sagittarius right now. You can't wait for proof that something is going to work before you do it. North Node is Gemini. You doing it will create the proof that it'll work. You're building it right now. And if you're going to wait for somebody else to do it or somebody else to figure it out, the world might end before that happens. But, it's quite a few people manifesting the end of the world, too. That's another thing that blew my mind. Like, Ralph Smart, like, he's somebody that I stopped watching a minute ago, but he popped back on my feed when the pandemic started breaking out. And it was just like the way that he was talking about it. I'm like, oh, like, ew, this is nasty. Like, why are we manifesting things this way? But then, oh, you're the chosen ones, deep divers. Sorry. I ain't got to go all the way there. Because it's not, even if I don't agree with someone, I'm not really the type of person to, like, attack sort of, like, their methodology or whatever. Did it irritate me? Yeah. I feel like a lot of people buy into these chosen one lines of like thinking, but what it's doing is it's creating this interesting sort of story. It's almost a Noah's Ark, right? When you buy into a chosen one philosophy, and when you are a self-proclaimed spiritual master manifester or whatever, what you are effectively doing is manifesting a reality in which you are one of the lucky few who get a ticket onto that ark, who will be safe as the world is falling apart. What you may not see is that ark is going to go down. It's the Titanic. You think you're building Noah's Ark, you're making the Titanic in a world that is flooding, and you think that you're going to be okay, but that iceberg has your ship's name on it, and you will have that fated encounter. It's a game of no winners. And chosen one, they go right, you go left. All that mentality does is it continues to put eggs in a basket of destruction, but you think you're putting a few eggs where you get out. I don't know if like this is the type of thing that 1 or 2 or 3 people make it out of. And if it is 1 or 2 or 3 people who are making it out, I don't know if it's the people who are selfish. Honestly, I don't know if it's the people who would manifest a dying, burning world in which they are the chosen few who get to survive. But, I mean, we've seen enough Jim Jones types of people to know that if you drink that Kool-Aid, Jimmy is still going to be alive and kicking it. He's going to be moving on to the next group of gullible guys and gals. Bottom of the deck is the 8 of Wands for the light side, or the lighter one, and the 6 of Cups. The 8 of Wands and the 6 of Cups in this, it's interesting. Because it can be a frantic energy. But these 2 cups up here and that clock, the divine timing, it's locked by a wall of roses. Roses symbolize love. Not only love for yourself, but love for others as well. And if you would forsake the world, like what good does it do a man to gain the world but lose himself? If you would forsake the world, if you would forsake those who are hurting, if you would forsake those, like the divine is nowhere in that. The divine is nowhere in ignoring people who have very legitimate concerns. The divine is nowhere in shut up and go back to sleep. I got to be up for work in a few hours. And it's like, if you really think about it, checking the closet, it may be more inconvenient for you. It may require you to do something that you don't want to do in the moment. But if you check the closet, not only is your child going to sleep better, not only is there going to be less noise because now they're not in their room crying or screaming or doing whatever, but it's just like a little bit in the moment pays off so much. And it's not about you and what makes you comfortable. And again, if you would forsake other people for your own comfortabilities, I don't know. That ain't like, I think love and light has become something, it's words that are empty. Like, I believe in it. Love, light, truth, and peace. I believe in it. It's more than just words, but again, it's like spirituality has become performative. Just like how a lot of religion has become performative. To the point where we don't even really get to know God or the divine for ourselves. We fall into the practice of rituals and patterns and habits. You get into a practice of asking, but it's more than just that. That's why I personally choose a world where we learn, a world where we get it together, a world where we recognize and we move forward together. Cause I don't know. In my mind, it's weird. It's weird. I can't be this spiritual. I can't listen to people who are like, we're spiritually this and we're spiritually that. We're made in the image of God. We have the power to create. And then who would turn around and use that power to like create a world of destruction, or to create a world where you got to go off the grid. And like, I'm like, girl, no. Like, if that's your disaster movie, your zombie like, if that's your apocalypse fantasy and you want to see if you can survive in a bunker, survive the end of the world and like repopulate the world and do all kinds of stuff, like, if that's for you, that's for you. But I'm not buying into that. Like, ew, no. Like, why would I do that? That ain't a life that I want to live. And I don't believe that I have to sacrifice indoor plumbing or heating and cooling or internet. I don't believe I have to sacrifice that stuff to make it to tomorrow. But that's going to require a whole lot of people doing the stuff that they need to do. And fortunately, it only requires enough people. And I don't know, it's just, again, it blows my mind. But, it goes back to that needing a boogeyman mentality that a lot of people sort of fall into a lot of times. It's like, we don't always need a villain. Somebody don't always got to be trying to get control over us. That's why I say it's complex, and it is kind of paradoxical in nature. But there's a way with that alchemist to name something as it is, but to also transmute it. Instead of just accepting it and trying to create off all on your own. It's like, it's time for the alchemist. The time of the magician is, we ain't there yet, honestly. We ain't even mastered alchemy yet. We ain't mastered changing one thing into another. You can't even change one thing to another. How are you going to produce something out of thin air? Because the magician energy is like ultimate alchemy. It's the ultimate alchemist. Because we never create from nothing. But it's taking the bare minimum. It's taking air and the molecules and the atoms and why do I keep wanting to say positrons? I guess we're talking about, different, like, not even antimatter. Yeah, I guess we're talking about like antimatter instead of dark matter now, or whatever. Different layers of reality. The electrons, the protons, and the neutrons, and we're assembling them into the atoms and assembling those atoms into molecules, and then so on and so forth. Like, that's ultimate sort of alchemy. You're taking even less material and making something even more miraculous. But if you can't even master base alchemy, and again, you got to start with what it is to do that. The cards that came out are the Ace of Coins, a whole new world, the Magi, speaking of the magician, and the Eight of Cups. The Ace of Coins, the Magi, and the Eight of Cups. This is interesting. What's at the bottom? What's at the bottom? Bottom of the deck is the Ten of Wands. Like, my hands are tied, is the energy that came here. It's an energy of like us sort of overburdening ourselves because we're trying to continue to push the burden off to something else. It reminds me of the burdened one in the SKT, where it's like the person is holding all the wands and the oxen are right there. I'm like, why aren't you using the ox to do what the ox can do? But so too, you can't get the ox to do anything that they're not going to do. And I think the energy that I'm getting from the year of the metal ox, or just the year of the ox, not necessarily the element of metal, It's us coming into a space of doing what we can do and then leaving what we can't do to those who can do that. It's like utilizing the oxen, utilizing the donkeys, the beasts of burden, but there are certain things that the beasts of burden can't do. And so too, as like as we depend on the divine to do this and to do that, we need to step up and do the things that we can do. And maybe that's what this is. What we're Eight of Cups seeing is that Ten of Wands energy, where we continue to put the burden off onto something else, where we don't really claim the fullness of our personal power because either we're constantly creating and manifesting the latest supervillain, or it's like as powerful as we believe we are, we're manifesting kryptonite. The mask, if it's over your mouth, it'll drain all of your strength and you will be nothing more than an earthworm slithering across the ground. And it's like a piece of cloth. Like, I don't know. It's like in one breath, you're telling me that I'm this powerful spiritual creator or whatever. I'm made in the image of the divine and whatever. But in the same breath, you telling me that if I put some cloth over my face, then all of a sudden, all that power just goes away. And again, for me, and maybe it's the energy that we approach it with. Because for me, the mask, from its very inception, it's something that protects people from you more than it protects you from people. And so it's like I am totally 100% not only okay with, but willing to minorly inconvenience myself in consideration for others. And it's like, why is that consideration for others your kryptonite? And I guess, again, if we take an observer outside perspective, if something that is meant to be in consideration for others is your kryptonite, then I think it only goes to show how self-serving you actually are. I mean, at least that's what it tells me. I'm not willing to do anything for myself or for others. And I believe that I should be able to do whatever I want to do. And if other people get sick as a result of that, and if some people die, then oh well, some people will die. I don't care. And it's like, wow, like, oof. The disregard for life, oof. The lack of a willingness to do even the most minorly inconvenient of things to, I don't know, have somebody else live in another day. Oof, like I can't even be bothered to. It's like, girl, is it really all that? Like, is it really all that? Like, really? Like 100%? Like, if we're being for real, you telling me a piece of cloth in front of your mouth is just evaporating every single little bit of spiritual power you got? See, that's that boogeyman kryptonite thing that people do that I don't fully understand. Because how can you in one breath or in one line of thinking think that you are this insanely powerful whatever thing, and then your kryptonite is something like that? It's like elephants and mice. It's like I don't get it. I don't understand. And I feel like it's one of the many ways that we overly complicate the system to create limitations that don't even exist or need to exist. And the Eight of Cups is us walking away from all of that, coming into our own ability with the Magi to create a world. The Eight of Cups is the walking the way in the creation of something new. It's an elevation in spiritual cognitive thinking. And it's a cognitive thinking that's a lot less performative. And it's like, I don't know, when I'm on here talking, like I don't talk, like everything I say, like if I say I do this and I do that, like that's things that I actually do. Like my words aren't empty. And if you've had the fortune of getting to know me, you would probably know that. It's consistent. I'm consistent across the board, and I actually believe in and practice what I say. And it's because I practice and believe what I say that, I've had the opportunity to experience life as I've had the opportunity to experience life. And from this side, again, you can really see how like people limit themselves and how people claim to be on a path of searching and seeking out and embodying divinity, but at the same time will be so quick to just discard and dismiss other people. Like I don't see how you can like really get one while dismissing the other. Some people will care more for animals than they do for other people. And it's like, it's not that that's necessarily inherently wrong, but it's like, man, can like other people at least get a little bit of some like respect or some decency or something? And I think it's one of the ways that it's one of those conditioning types of things that really doesn't serve us at all. It's like the old systems were surprisingly effective at separating people from their hearts. I don't know. But again, there is this energy of us getting it, but we also need to get it on an individual level. Is this higher perspective? Yeah. Higher perspective and ask body. The third eye is featured on both of these. We get this cat and we get these wings. It reminds me of a griffin. I had a dream about a griffin one time. I was riding a griffin with this other girl, and we were magicians. And she noticed something about the air, so she did a little spell to check the air quality, and like the air was too thin. And so she was doing some kind of alchemy to put more like oxygen into the air to rebalance the elements. And then she like fell off of the griffin. And like I was fine, so I didn't know what she was talking about. But I was like, hey, Griffin, like you may want to slow down a little bit because this girl said that something is up. And then she fell off. I don't know if she completed whatever she completed. That was a weird dream. Because then we landed, and I was like under attack by people or something. And they were putting me on trial. That was one of the first dreams I had where somebody was speaking French. Because there was this girl speaking French to me, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. And then she got even more upset. And I was like, oh, okay, that's French. I was like, I don't speak French either. And she was less upset, but I still didn't understand her. And I think it was like my family. I was in my grandma's house. And they were like they were pointing weapons at us, and they were like, we can't believe y'all did this and y'all did that. And I'm like, whoa, what are y'all talking about? Like, we literally just got here. It's like, y'all did this. Like, we saw y'all do this. And I was like, we ain't do that. And then I'm like, wait, so at what time did y'all say this happened? And they were like, it happened that night. And I was like, y'all are my family. Like, y'all know that I have RP, and I have like basically 0 night vision. So if I can't even see at night, how am I supposed to do all of what y'all are accusing me of doing? And if I can't even see at night, then y'all should have known immediately that that's not me. Because that's somebody operating in a space that I don't operate in because I can't even see in that space. And, in the past, I did my best to avoid being out at night because I can't see nothing. And they're like, oh, okay, so it wasn't you. And I'm like, yeah, so like, thank you. It was like, I don't know, it was this huge misunderstanding. But it was like somebody, even if they were wearing my face, they're doing something that I would never do. So I can understand why y'all are as upset as you are, and maybe why y'all were as surprised as you were. But again, like, not only would I never do this, it's something that I'm incapable of doing because I can't even see at night. I don't know why all of that is coming into my mind. But I guess if I'm talking about my eyes, that's a physical limitation because of a genetic condition. Apparently. And it's like the lower perspective in the moment. It's too in the moment to even recognize when things aren't behaving as they should. But it gets you to misattribute and to be upset with the wrong thing. It's like a similar energy to like when things don't go people's way and they get upset with the divine and like, wow, the divine done really abandoned me. The divine done really done left me. Like the divine really gonna do me like that. And it's like, well, first of all, ain't nobody tell you to do this in the first place. Second of all, the divine explicitly told you not to do this in the third place. And third of all, consequence is going to be consequence. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The divine ain't yo get out of jail free card. Like, can the divine do that? If it serves you, yeah. But is the divine going to get into the habit of just bailing you out continuously? Probably not, because people who get bailed out continuously have a tendency to not learn to get in there in the first place. And the divine ain't necessarily interested in creating no repeat offenders. So you're going to have to stop with the offenses. Listen to the divine the first time. Don't get yourself in the mess to begin with. And then maybe you'll begin to experience like, oh, wow, the divine really ain't like really left me. It's like people experience consequence and they act like it's the end of the world. And it's like, girl, like, but you did it. Like, how, like, but you did it. And now that you have to face the repercussions of doing it, it's like, hello? Bottom of the deck is love, though. Bottom of the deck is love. And honestly, it does bring a certain tough love into mind. Because it's an intervention type of love. It's like, because I love you, I'm no longer going to sit by and continuously support you in this or watch as you do this to yourself. Like, I'm not going to do it. Because I love you, I'm not going to support you in this. Because I know that if I continue to support you in this, you're going to continue to do it. And also with higher perspective and ask body, I think it's time for us to, it's almost like giving the body what it needs. Like, and what it actually needs. Like, sometimes if we experience something, it's like, oh, we go to something to try to mitigate, to cope, right? And it's like, well, maybe we should listen. Instead of ask body, I'm getting like listen to the body. Take that higher perspective. Don't be so quick to try to silence something and actually sit with it. Like, sit with yourself and honor yourself like you would sit with someone that you care about. Instead of just like running off to try to forget or running off to distract yourself or whatever. It's like, imagine being ignored your whole life and then you've come across someone who like actually acknowledges you and listens to you. Now, imagine doing that for yourself and how powerful that is and how game-changing that is. There's a lot being asked of us. Honestly, it feels like it's even more being asked of us because we've lived so long ignoring and not doing. I meant to timestamp the final messages, but that ain't happened. It's fine. I don't know, but something about this Pisces season is feeling like the time for excuses is over. It's over. O-V-E-R. It's over. O-V-A-H. Over. I'm sorry. Anyway, I ain't sorry. What am I apologizing for? Deal with it. Somebody got to say something to somebody. We can't keep spiritually patty caking and spiritually, there, it'll be okay. It's like, no. Spiritually, you need to toughen up. You fall down on the bike, you scrape your knee, you cry. I acknowledge that because it hurt. And when I spray this spray on it, it's probably going to hurt some more. And not only is it going to hurt, but it may kill some of the healthy cells too. So, hey, deal with it. That's what medicine is nowadays. We forgot how to be discriminate in the ways that we need to be discriminate. It's like we discriminate in all of the negative ways, but in all of the positive ways, we can exercise some discernment where we could be a little bit more discriminate. We don't know how to do that. But we need to discriminate in a negative way. Oh yeah, girl, sure. We know how to do that. Oh yeah, we're the master. It's like it doesn't separate. It doesn't differentiate. It doesn't specialize. It doesn't suit the needs of the individual. Like everything is just like this blanket approach. Well, it don't work the same for everything. And it's not going to have the same effect in every space. That's why it's about becoming more individualized care. And that's one of the things that like a lot of gene therapies that we're seeing come out. And I know like GMO and gene therapies, it's a dodgy sort of subject. And again, I believe that we're going to be coming into a system that won't take advantage of that to do nefarious things. I believe we're going to be coming into a space where if someone is getting a gene therapy, it's actually beneficial for them. And a gene therapy, it looks at our individual makeup. It takes the individual into account more than any other medicine is really able or capable of doing. Everything isn't a one-size-fits-all. And another thing on the divine astrology thing, he said we entered the age of Aquarius in like the 40s. And the invention of the atom bomb was one of the first things in the Age of Aquarius, and the explosion in technology after that is Age of Aquarius. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. That makes sense. But anyway, I forget where I was going with that. I'm gonna end this here because I'm able to keep going. I hope y'all have a good whatever whenever you see this, and I hope you're acting ACTING and alignment ALINGNMENT. Can I spell? With that which you wish to experience, because it's more than just positive affirmations and crystals and spiritual baths and moon rituals. Like, there's some actual action in that. All of that is like supplementary. It's good at establishing a foundation to work off of. It's good at like switching energy. It's good at like, reducing the amount of negative energy for you to put in some action and feel like you're getting somewhere. But again, 1,000,000,000 times 0 is 0. 1,000,000,000,000 times 0 is 0. If you're not doing anything, all of that stuff that you're doing energetically, it doesn't have anything to anchor it into the physical on your part. You got to be physically doing something to anchor that energy and then to move it forward. But that's what I got. I hope this full moon in Virgo is kind of y'all. I hope y'all do everything that y'all need to do to get where you want to be and to break cycles and to really open your eyes and to handle and deal with and face the things that are ailing you. Because if you don't do it, then yeah, girl, it's going to be dark every time. Hello? Like, if you never turn on the lights, it's going to be dark. Like, you've been in this area long enough to know that you need a street light right there, that you need a little night light right there, that you need something right there. If you keep traveling along the highway and your signal drop at a certain spot, maybe build a little cell phone tower out there somewhere so you can get some signal in dead spots. But it's like, it's time for us to do something. It's time for us to do something. We got to do something. And it's also time for us to give a freak about other people, because we're not the only person in the world. And oneness don't automatically mean that all of a sudden I don't exist and everybody else in the world don't exist and you are the only person that exists. So it's fine for you to be selfish and whatever and blah, 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 whatever. But I don't know. In my mind, again, it's like how y'all get closer and closer and closer to the divine, but get more and more and more selfish and self-centered. Like, I don't get it. But maybe it ain't for me to get. I would just ask yourself to see if it's working for you. And if it ain't working for you, maybe, I don't know, mix it up, change it up somewhere. You know what I mean? And again, I know that some of the people who I may be potentially addressing ain't necessarily watching this, but I speak to the collective, and I have the collective's ear. And somebody got to start saying something somewhere. Shoot, somebody got to start holding spiritual people accountable, or else we'll just be the monsters that create. It's like how people flee, how the Pilgrims fled prosecution in Europe, some of them. But what they did was they came to America and they built a country that did it even worse. And it's like, girl, come on. But I guess it's like, oh, now it's my turn to be the villain. And it's like, no. Like, why? Can we not do that, please? Can we just like say F the villains? Life is going to be challenging regardless if there's someone there to introduce challenge or not. So I ain't got to manifest more challenges because challenges will find their way to me. Let me just do my best to manifest, us creating a space that we can all come into. Us creating a space where we are all honored as individuals, as separate, and the collective. It's not divisive to honor and celebrate what makes someone unique. That's not divisive at all. That's actually pretty inclusive. It's like, hey, I see that you're different from me, but that's cool. Feel free to be as different as you want to be. Weird is great. Age of Aquarius, we're all quirky and unique. It's like some people think that encouraging people to be themselves is like divisive. And like it's a difference between honoring what makes us different and being divisive. I think it's a lack of the system's capability and a lot of people's capability to honor and acknowledge people who are different from them that speaks to the diversity or to the division that we think we're causing just by honoring people. And it's like, if your solution to someone being like, hey, I'm hurting, is like, shut up, ain't nothing in your closet, go back to sleep. Like, again, I don't know. I don't see how effective that would be in any scenario or situation, but we all have our own paths. I'm not going to say that that don't work for somebody, because maybe it do. Right? There's somebody out there for everybody, I guess. I don't know. I just don't see how that gets us any closer to the divine or to a unifying sort of like principle or whatever. Yeah. Bye.